Hi, I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council. Tonight's meeting, the big topic of discussion was the proposed Haggard Farms rezoning. I could cut to the chase and tell you how that turned out, but I'm not going to. That's what we in the biz call a teaser, and it's what people outside the biz call just being a jerk. But I'm going to do it anyway. I will tell you that my beard, my nascent beard, came up during public comment tonight. So my beard is actually a matter of interest to the community. But we started out in the preliminary open meeting with an engineering departmental report. Got a few fun facts. Of course, the engineering department manages the design and rehabilitation, construction, etc. of infrastructure. That could be roads, streets, sewage, water, that sort of thing. We are increasing our capacity, our road capacity at several key intersections. That has been a bugaboo of mine for a very long time. So traffic in Plano is a problem for everybody. Everybody recognizes that. One of the biggest issues we have is the timing of our lights in conjunction with the length of our dedicated turn lanes. So you might have a 6-lane thoroughfare, 3 lanes each way, with dedicated turn lanes that are about 5 inches long. So you get 1, 2, 3 cars in a dedicated left turn lane, for instance. And during any sort of heavy traffic, they spill into the left-hand lane, not just the dedicated turn lane, and it comes to a standstill. And you might have the same thing in the right-hand dedicated turn lane. It comes to a standstill, reducing a 6-lane street to 2 lanes, 1 each way. So that's a big problem. So extending the capacity at those key intersections will really help a lot of our worst congestion. And of course, a big project is the Cullen Creek culvert. So we probably shouldn't have built anything there to begin with way back when, because this culvert is a massive project, upwards of $50 million with an M, not a B, but that's still a giant number. It's kind of like Washington, D.C. was built on an actual swamp. Prophetic, you know? Maybe there are just some places things shouldn't be built on, but we are humans, we forge forth, and we start building things anyway, even if they're a bad idea. Tower of Babel comes to mind, but not that we're building the Tower of Babel in Plano. Facilities. Interesting. We have 115 buildings, City of Plano-owned buildings in the city, with a total of 1.7 million square feet. We process 15,000 work orders annually, and has a $10 million operating budget and $13.7 million in capital maintenance fund. Several construction projects that are going on are renovations at Davis and Harrington libraries, and of course the new fire training center. I drove by it the other day, and it's really coming along nicely. For those who don't know, we broke ground on it late last year. This is a new dedicated fire training facility in the city of Plano. Our firefighters were traveling to a training center in McKinney and sharing time with McKinney and other cities. And the challenge to that is you got to schedule way in advance. And if there's an issue that day, like Snowmageddon, or if there's, a fire and firefighters have to respond, then they don't get to use their training day, and they got to get back at the end of the line and reschedule for another time. This will be a dedicated facility and a state-of-the-art facility. And as Chief Greif said, it's not good enough to train until you get it right. You got to train until you can't get it wrong. So that's going off on a tangent on the fire training facility, but I'm particularly proud of it. And then we have several things that are in design, such as generator updates. That was something of particular importance in the aforementioned Snowmageddon. Then we had an update from the Senior Advisory Board. They conduct a survey, and this year's survey, which we actually straddled 2020 and 2021, the results were presented before council. There are a lot of data points in it. I'm going to touch on some of the highlights. I will note that it was noted during the presentation by the Senior Advisory Board that at different census checkpoints, we had 3.5% of our population in Plano were seniors, and then 5%, and now with the 2020 census, 13%. So it's a pretty big jump, and it shows that a lot of people in Plano are aging in place. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a sidetrack here as well. That's for a couple of reasons. Number one, Plano is an awesome place to live. But number two, as I've said for a very long time, we have a dichotomy of housing offerings in Plano. So people who raised a family here and now they're empty nesters, they don't really have good options to downsize their homes. If they have still a large 2-story home that was once full of kids, they don't have all those kids there anymore. They don't need all that space. They don't necessarily want all that space, but it's a lot less expensive for them to just stay put than to sell their home and downsize into something smaller because there's not a lot that they can actually move into in Plano that's smaller if they still want to own, or they've got to move very far away from everything they know and love in Plano. So that is a big problem, and the biggest thing we need in Plano is smaller footprint ownership options in terms of residential needs. So some of the things that were brought up in the Senior Advisory Board presentation were that there was a minimal increase for survey to survey in the awareness of services available to seniors in the city. So that's something that needs to be promoted and promoted effectively. It was noted that the Caring Callers program is now conducted by Senior Source. That's a biweekly call care plan to check up on seniors who may be living alone, may need some assistance, and just make sure they're okay, make sure their needs are being met. It was, of course, with the prior item, it was mentioned that we need to promote and increase resources for seniors lacking reliable assistance. Now, one of the things they said was that they would like to come and present before council periodically. This was really the first time that they had been able to come present their findings from the senior survey, and it was important to them because they had a captive audience in council. We had to listen, and they could be assured that the report wasn't just filed somewhere and then collecting digital dust. But I thought that was a fantastic idea to have the actual board come present to us periodically, and so I raised as a topic to discuss in a future agenda having all of our boards and commissions do that periodically, basically on a rotating basis. We get periodic departmental reports from our city staff, like we had the engineering departmental report tonight. I think we should intermix those with board and commission reports from the chairs and the actual members of those boards and commissions at our city council meetings. So that'll be coming back up for discussion. So we moved on to the regular meeting. The Best Neighborhoods Platinum designation was presented to 3 of our neighborhoods. Whiffletree, I think 5 through 7, that might have been 4 through 7, Kings Ridge and Hunters Creek. So congratulations to all of you. The Best Neighborhoods Platinum designation, the Best Neighborhoods program, is basically a program to recognize outstanding efforts on the part of HOAs and our neighborhoods in Plano to really put their best foot forward and provide eminently livable areas. We went to the first item for individual consideration, which was our policy statement for tax abatements. So if you've listened to me for any length of time, you know that I am in favor of tax abatements. This is basically where if somebody pledges to build or renovate so many square feet or a certain dollar value of additional improvements to their property, that they receive a tax break on that for a period of time. My support for this comes in the theory that nobody should be punished for improving their land especially within permitted zoning. This is most poignant for homeowners in that if they build a pool, for instance, they put in a pool, they're going to get walloped with an increased property tax bill because now the taxable value of their home has gone up because the market value of their home has gone up. And so putting in that pool, which doesn't cost the city an extra dime comparatively, you're going to have to pay a whole lot more property tax for that. It doesn't make sense. So if a business is going to build a new headquarters, for instance, bringing in or increasing the taxable value of that land just by hundreds of times, it doesn't make sense to punish them any more than the increase to the cost of city services. So I don't have a problem with that. What I want is for anybody to be able to benefit from tax abatements. So that if you do improve your property, if you build a pool, put on a new roof, otherwise improve your property and increase the market value and hence the taxable value of your home, I do not want you to be able to be punished by that. I want to put into place something that makes sense so that if the cost of city services to the city and hence to the taxpayers is not increased, then we don't just start collecting new taxes just because. So that discussion is actually going to be coming up, I think, next Monday because I put it on a future agenda in the past. So now we came to the Haggard Farms rezoning. So this is the Haggard Farms area between Windhaven and Spring Creek, east of Parkwood and west of the place where Windhaven and Spring Creek join. The only thing that's really developed in there right now is the Abatement neighborhood. And those are higher end single family homes. So the proposed development is 700 multifamily units plus a retail, I'll call it a retail-esque area and a hotel and some other, and some office space, as well as an assisted living facility. So I'll cut to the chase now. Teaser's over. This passed 5-3, which is by the same margin that it passed planning and zoning in November. Pardon me. I could not support this project. There were a number of things I ran through. I'll detail them in writing. Suffice it to say that this project did not conform to any of the comprehensive plans we've had in place since the 1986 plan. Some 35 years ago. It did not conform to the 86 plan, which was the interim plan that this was submitted under. It doesn't conform to the new comprehensive plan, and it didn't conform to the Plano Tomorrow plan. This area was not meant, and still isn't meant, to hold residential. Neither was the existing zoning. Neither did the existing zoning, until tonight, permit residential. The rezoning request was to enable residential on an area that did not permit it. And I liked the concept of the plan, but not for this place and not at this time in Plano. As I brought up in the meeting, as I brought up previously, Plano already consists of 41% rentals in our housing mix. That is a massive number for the North Texas market, massively massive. And once this comes online, once Beacon Square and Cullen Creek and a few other projects that have been approved but not yet built come online, I'm shooting from the hip here, but we're going to be approaching 45-46% rental, very close to 50. The fact is that on average, people who rent do not put down the roots and have the same level of investment in a community as people who own. Now, this is not to say that that's the case in all cases. Just like on average, men are larger and stronger than women. That does not mean that there are not women who are some women who are larger and stronger than some men. There are some people who rent who put down greater roots and have more of an investment in a community than some people who own. But on average, it's just the value proposition of renting. It's temporary. It's meant to be temporary. Temporary might be 6 months, it might be 6 years, but you're not necessarily going to stick around. You don't know if you want to stick around. You don't know if you're going to be able to stick around. But when you buy that home, which typically happens when people get married and start having children, I'll fully allow that young professionals, especially right out of college, they prefer renting. And it makes total sense. They don't know what the next 5 years is going to hold in store for them. But when they get married and they start having children, overwhelmingly they want a single family home, usually in the suburbs. But that's in my estimation, an unhealthy proportion of rentals. And so, as I've long said, if I'm going to support additional rental property, it's got to make a whole lot of sense for the area and for the city. And for me, this did not. It didn't conform to the comprehensive plan. It didn't conform to the existing zoning. Of course, it needed to be rezoned, but I mean, it was a substantial change from the existing zoning, not just a minor change. It had overwhelming opposition from the immediate zip code, 75024, where the property is, and right across the street in 75093. Now, those are large zip codes. In 75024, 1.5 times as many people were opposed as were in favor. And that was a dramatic change from in October, when it was way more opposed. But in 75093, which starts right across Windhaven, right across the street, 14 times as many people were opposed as were in favor. Now, that's discounting further flung zip codes and areas in East Plano that just aren't anywhere near this. But it still had overwhelming opposition. Now, this is what it comes down to for me. We spent 2 years coming up with a new comprehensive plan, a large portion of the goal of which was to number one, create a comprehensive plan that not just the majority, but the overwhelming majority of our people could get behind, but also to start to heal the very real divide in our city that had grown over the years since the passage of the Plano Tomorrow Plan. And my biggest concern was that, and we did pass with the new comprehensive plan, we passed an ordinance requiring specific findings if P&Z and council were going to pass a zoning request that did not conform to the comprehensive plan. That only applies to the new comprehensive plan, not this interim plan under which this project was submitted. But still, the spirit of that has to mean something. And with such overwhelming citizen opposition and with such non-conformance to the interim comprehensive plan even, there were areas of conformance, but by and large, it just did not conform. For council to pass it tonight, I think sent the exactly wrong message to our citizens that, yeah, we went through all this. We understood you were upset about the prior comprehensive plan. You wanted to be heard more. So we went ahead and we passed it, but that doesn't really matter that much now. I hope I'm wrong about that. I'm hoping that the precedent set tonight, which was the very first zoning case first big zoning case up after the passage of the new comprehensive plan, even though it wasn't filed under the new comprehensive plan. I'm just very afraid that that message is going to cause some people to re-entrench, and I very much want to move forward. I want to look toward, as I've always said, creating the future version of the Plano that we all love today. I just want to make sure that the Plano we all love today is still the Plano we love, and doesn't get reshaped into something that nobody ever moved here for or wanted to stay here for. That moves into what I'm calling the Chris Cuomo of the Haggard Farms rezoning requests, the Fredo of the Haggard Farms rezoning requests. The reason for that is this was a minor afterthought of a request. It's dwarfed by its much more significant bigger brother, and its success would rise or fall with the success of its bigger brother. This was an adjunct for 8.2 acres of land for the independent living facility, which the site plan for which had already been approved. So they could go ahead and build that. And this rezoning request was to change the designation so that the already approved site plan would now conform with the bigger Haggard Farms proposal, which had just passed minutes before, because that created an imbalance with the allowed floor to area ratio. To put it very simply, instead of a measure of building height, floor to area ratio says that the amount of floor space you have, which includes each and every floor of a multi-story building, there's a certain limit to that, to the total land area. So the floor to area ratio for this was designated as 0.4 to 1, which is just a ratio of how many floors you can have to the land area. They wanted it changed to 1 to 1. Anthony Riccadelli and myself voted against it so that the approved site plan, it could go ahead and be built. But if that plan did not actually materialize, sure, the zoning would not be in conformance with that site plan. But if the site plan didn't come through, I wanted to preserve the protections that were on the prior zoning and keep it at a 0.4-to-1 ratio. So that whatever took the place of the independent living, or assisted living facility, if it didn't come to fruition, would not then just have the same carte blanche ability for a 1-to-1 FAR. That is the Plano City Council meeting tonight. That actually went on longer than I anticipated. I was going to wrap this up and head to bed. But it is approximately probably 11:30 p.m. now, and you will not see this until tomorrow, so it's no longer 11:30 p.m. I thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, good night and God bless.